Welcome to Bitesize Edge. And today I have the absolute delight and, honour in many ways to be speaking with Steve Judge. Now, some of you might already know who Steve Judge is. He is a motivational speaker. He is an author. He is also a Paralympian. Back when Steve was 28 years old, he suffered a devastating car accident that left him not only fighting for his life, but also facing the challenge of whether he would ever walk again. And as we go through this podcast, you'll hear how Steve chose to take his excuses and turn them into goals. Not only did he learn to walk again, but he continued his journey and he left his wheelchair behind to become the 2-time world champion in the sport of paratriathlon. Now, for any of you who know me, you'll know that I do triathlons as well. I'm late to the game. I do the sprint ones, which are pretty easy. Well, they're not pretty easy at all. They're awfully challenging. They're not. They're the shorter ones of what I mean by that. So I also have a bit of a personal fascination with Steve's journey. He's also a professional speaker, numerously renowned, talks internationally, numerous awards. He's an established author and he runs a business as a resilience coach. So it's going to be fabulous having a conversation with Steve. His mantra, strapline, however you want to call it, is his mission, as he words it, is to help people, inspire others and motivate many. So let's now have a conversation with the fabulous Steve Judge. Okay, so joining me this morning, as I said, is Steve Judge. Steve, welcome.
Hi, Pip. It's nice to be here. Thank you very much for letting me come here and speak on your show. It's really nice to see you and to share my story with your audience. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to digging into. We had a little chat before we started this. I'm really looking forward to understanding a little bit more around kind of the story that you told yourself as you went through your journey, and how that manifests itself in what you're doing now as a coach working with individuals. And do you work with businesses as well, Steve? Or was it purely on one-to-one basis?
So I do my keynote as a professional speaker. I do my workshops, so in groups, and then I also do one-to-one coaching with individuals, executives, or just business owners, or somebody who wants to transform their life from where they are to where they want to be. So Brilliant. It really opens the doors to anybody, really, anybody that I can help.
Excellent, fabulous. I normally end a podcast with that, but we've started with it, so that positions it really well. Okay, Steve, tell me a little bit about your story. Obviously I've read a fair amount around your journey, but for you, things started to shift and change when you had a really serious car accident. Is that correct?
That's right. That was back in 2002. I was driving on the outskirts of Sheffield, which is where I live, and it'd been raining, so there's a bit of water on the road, and my car skidded. Now, there's nobody else on the road. There's nobody else in the car. I wasn't speeding or anything. It's just a bad accident. And as my car skidded, it went towards this pole, and there's nothing I could do. I was out of control, and I crashed into the pole, which bent the car in half, and it crushed both my legs. Now, everybody came to save me, the police, the ambulance, the fire brigade, and they got me out of the car. They got me to the nearest hospital. And that was there, where they took me into the operating theatre, but they really didn't know whether I was going to live or to die. And so that was traumatic enough for me. That message was relayed onto my mum, my brother, my sister, for them to receive that call. I think they're going to, may lose the youngest son, the youngest brother. My father had passed away in 1998 from cancer. So it's just those three. And, that's what that's the message they got. So they came to the hospital overnight. When I woke up, I felt terrible. I was in so much pain and I felt groggy and static, very static. But just, seeing my mum and my brother and my sister being there was just so emotional for me. I felt that I'd kind of inconvenienced them from being there. I just wanted to brush myself down, put my clothes back on and go home. I couldn't, I was in a really bad way. The surgeon came round. That's when he told me that although they'd saved both of my legs, there's a strong possibility that I may never walk again.
Gosh.
And I
And how
think,
old were you then, Steve, if I can
so
ask?
I was just coming up to, so I think I was 29 years old when that
Wow.
happened. And that's quite significant. They say that if I'd been over 30, it kind of crosses a boundary, and they probably would
Okay.
have amputated the leg because your body doesn't fix as well after the age of 30. And they've got to draw the line somewhere. So they gave me a chance. But I think when I was told that information, it's very much a fight or flight.
Yeah.
And I can remember that. I can remember being that the flight would have been I could have just rolled over in bed and just give it in and go,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I will never walk again, like you just said.
Mm.
But the thing is, there was something inside me, I'd say quite an anger inside me that was really het up about it, as if to say, who do you think you are? You don't even know who I am. And you've told me, you've just fixed my legs, and now you're saying that I can't walk. And that anger was like a red rag to a bull. And I felt then that I needed to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
And do something about it. I was prepared to do anything and everything it took so that I could stand again, so I could walk again. That, to me, at that moment, was my goal, and that's what I wanted to work towards.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you're completely, gosh, the fight or flight situation, and also that element of freeze that can happen. That moment in time when you just kind of freeze at where you're at. But isn't it interesting that the medical profession are there doing what they do and what they do best in so many ways, but actually what sits behind the person's recovery so often is what is going on for them at a conscious and unconscious level. The story they tell themselves, the way that they choose to respond to a situation, can often be the turning point for recovery. I mean, you've made a phenomenal recovery through to accepting what's being said to you. So was there at any stage when you heard that message, when the doctors gave you that information, was there any moment in your psyche where you kind of went, it's all over, this is it?
I don't think there was. I think it's very hard for me to recall because, as you know, the brain deletes all the negative stuff. So I just remember all the good stuff. So, which is great. And I think that's what helped me through. And I'll be open to that, was my ignorance. I didn't really know what was going on. There was doctors there, there were surgeons there, and they were amazing at their job. But I was like, la, 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 la. I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to stand and walk again. I can remember saying to the physio, I was given so many physio exercises as time progressed through my rehabilitation journey. And I'd be constantly going back to the physio and saying, what more can I do? What more can I do? What more can I do? This is my legs. I want to make sure that I've got no regrets. At the end of this, I just want to make sure that I've done as much as I can. So what more can I do now? At one point, I had 21 different exercises to do in physio. That was my job. That's all I had to do 3 times a day. And that was hard. It was really hard to do, but I was passionate about it. And I remember at one point I was trying to get my legs straight and I couldn't get it straight. And they said, you've got to get it straight. Otherwise you're going to walk with a limp for the rest of your life. It's going to mess up your hip and your knees. I said, okay, I get it. I've got to get my legs straight. And so that was physio. And I started plotting a graph. So I'd measure my leg because I'm an engineer. So I'd measure my leg first, benchmark, and then I'd do the physio, and then I'd measure it afterwards, through the tears and the grit in the teeth and the pain. And I saw the progress slowly getting better and better. I remember going to my physio and she's saying, how is your leg straightening going? I said, well, I've got a graph. What do you think of that? And she's like, oh my goodness, Mr. Judge, you don't need to do a graph for us. And I said, I haven't done it for you.
Done it for me.
Done it for me. I need to see progress. And that's what I did. I did that with everything. It was about being the best that I could be with regards to physio, again, so I didn't have any regrets at the end after the 3 years.
Incredible. And there must be some synergy, surely, with the seeing progress with the work you now do with others.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the first things I do when I'm helping others, coaching or workshops or keynote, I want to know where they are now. What's their benchmark? Whereabouts are you? For my sake, so the ones I've done my amazing work, I can see that they've actually, it's actually worked and they're higher than they were, but also for themselves, so that they know where they're going on their journey. How do you feel? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you excited? Do you know what to do? What are your goals? A big question I always ask is, what are your goals? What do you want to do? And people say, I haven't really got any goals. You think, oh, come on, let's basic it. Let's simplify it. You want to be alive. You want to be happy. What makes you happy? If money makes you happy, what do you want to spend the money on? Who do you want to be with? These little things that people take for granted, they're goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's got them, whether you're young or old. The older generation, they say, oh, I'm too old to have goals now, Mr. Judge. And I'm like, well, do you want to see your grandchildren more? Well, I want to do that. Okay, that would be a goal then. Do you want to meet up with more people? Do you want to go to church more often? What do you want to do? I know the pandemic's kind of screwed that up a little bit, but there's still things that you can do.
Absolutely.
I think everybody's got goals. People don't always call them goals. And I would sit down with my kids at the beginning of the year and we do a list of what things we want to do this year. That's what it's called. I know it's goals, but it's if they want to go to the zoo more, they want to see the cousins more, they want to go out in the fresh air more, go out on the bikes more, they're goals. So let's treat them as goals and work out how we're going to achieve them.
And I think with that, you're kind of on the money with it, aren't you, really? I think sometimes, certainly in the world that I work in, when we talk about goals, sometimes people will automatically go for something huge and massive and go, oh, I want to have done blah, blah, blah. And that can seem really daunting. So we pull it back in a little bit and go, hold on a second, let's look at each individual step that makes up your journey to get to that place, and consider each one of those steps as exactly as you've just said there, Steve, as a goal in its own right. Because it's important also to recognize what's been achieved, albeit it might seem small, what has been achieved. And you're right, the pandemic has thrown all of this into a bit of a kibosh. And equally, and sometimes more so, there's a need to kind of go, what have I achieved today?
Yeah.
What have I achieved this week? So that there's self-value, self-worth.
Totally. It's a celebration. Don't forget about the celebration. You've got to celebrate. You've got to pat yourself on the back, do whatever makes you happy, and think about how you're going to celebrate when you have done this goal. So that sometimes you need that to motivate you. Not all the time, but sometimes when you're feeling a little bit low and a bit pushed down, you think, don't forget, when I finish this goal, I'm going to celebrate big time. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Whatever makes you happy. It might be relaxing, it might be having a party or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's so important to celebrate the wins. I do that now on my evening routine. I only just started that in the last couple of months. And that is, what have I achieved today? Just write down 3 things. And it's the writing down that, telling yourself, yeah, that's good. What are my gratitudes for today?
Yes.
Things that I take for granted. I've got a roof over my head. I have actually got some food in the fridge, so that's good. I've got heating, which is really important at this time of year. So just these simple things are really important, just to tell yourself and just give yourself a pat on the back. A lot of people don't do that, and they achieve a goal and they go straight on to the next one. And I'm kind of in favor of that, but don't forget to take a step back, realize what you've achieved, celebrate, and then move on to the next goal.
Yeah, and again, really important. I think that moment of just acknowledgement, isn't it, is really key. So you talked about in order to kind of know where it is you want to go, you need to know where you are to start with. Yeah. So if we go back to your journey, as you were going through your physio and getting yourself to a place where you could walk again, where in the midst of this did becoming a paratriathlete come to play, Steve?
Okay, not at all at that stage. I think anybody who's been in hospital, you just want to get out of hospital. And then I just wanted to stand again, walk again, had to grow my leg back by 4 inches, had to get my legs straight. There's so many things that I had to do and concentrate on. But it was after I got to the end of that, my goal pretty much had been to become normal again. And I realized that once I reached that stage, and after 3 years of rehabilitation.
3 years, gosh.
Yeah,
How much of that was in hospital?
There's only about 5 weeks in hospital, and then a lot of it was at home. I guess the rest of it was at home, and then stretching my leg out took a long time to do, 100 days, because it's like 10 centimeters. And then there was literally no bone in my leg. It was just held together with a metal cage. I then had to grow the bone back. Now, to do that, to be honest, I didn't know how to do that. My ignorance, obviously, which I've already mentioned. I just thought you drank, milk for calcium or
a little bit more calcium.
Yeah, lots of cheese and milk. And the surgeon said, no, Mr. Judge, no, you've got to stand on your leg. You've got to walk on your leg. You've got to trust that cage.
Gosh.
I was like, geez, it's right for you saying that. You trust the cage, but that's what I had to do. And so finding somewhere flat around Sheffield and going out with my crutches and walking on my leg through the pain to encourage my bone to grow back, because there was no bone in my leg, but I was putting weight through it. That's very much a mind over matter. And this is what I talk about with other people in my keynote and everything, is about that's what I had to do. I had to go in my comfort zone, as you can well imagine, to reach my goal, to get my bone to grow. What's other people doing? What are you doing? Is it an email that you're going to do, a phone call that you're going to do? What have you got to do to go outside of your comfort zone to reach your goal? Because there will be something that you'll be putting off. But if you want that goal enough, then that's what you'll do. you'll do anything and everything. And like I said, my overall goal was to get back to normal. I realized that there was no such thing because I was very different. I had disability now in both my legs, my left leg and my right leg. And, you know, I started having to think about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. And a big message that I pass out to people is to stop comparing yourself to others, because everybody's different, whether it's your friends, your family, celebrities. Think about yourself, think about what you can do rather than what you can't do. And that's what I had to do. So initially I started off with, I couldn't run anymore, but I could swim. So I swam. I eventually got onto a bike and I cycled. And I was doing these challenges and for charity, and people said, Steve, have you always been like this? And it's a big question that I always get asked. Have I always been like this, setting goals and pushing myself? And I thought back and I thought, to be honest, not really at school or work, but I think in scouting, it takes me back, you know, when I was a kid with the badges down my arm. I loved those badges. You know, achieving them, setting those as goals and working towards them. And I found a photo, true story this, I found a photo of myself when I was about 10 and a half years old as a Cub Scout. And my first 3 badges that I ever got in this photo were swimming, cycling and running. Okay, right, so bring it on. So I went down to Google and I typed in swimming and cycling competitions, and it just kept on coming up with triathlon. I thought, yeah, but I can't run, but I thought maybe I could do the swim and the bike, and the run section I could just walk and I could finish. But as I scrolled down, there's this thing called a paratriathlon, triathlon for disabled people. And I thought, oh, I wonder with my disability, I wonder if I am disabled, you know, I've got injuries. I went down, got assessed. They gave me lots of exercises, asked me lots of questions. And they said, Mr. Judge, you are disabled. And I was like, yes, this is great. This is good news, because now I can enter as a disabled athlete. And they asked me then, they said, can you run? And I said, not yet.
Not yet.
To then, I hadn't had the goal. I hadn't run for 7.5 years. That had been stolen from me. Running was my passion before the accident. 7.5 years. When I went out running for the first time, you know, my brain knew what to do, but my legs couldn't quite do it. But in a way, I was doing it. And I was looking down at my legs. I was just smiling and going, wow, this is awesome. Because I was running again. The thing is, that's the adrenaline, the endorphin that was helping me go. But when I stopped, well, that's when the pain hit, especially my right leg, my right ankle. Oh, my goodness, excruciating pain, which meant that the next day I couldn't run. So I thought about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. And I went swimming. And the day after that, I went cycling. And the day after that, the pain had subsided a little bit. So I went running again because I love to run. And that was my training montage all the way up to the first paratriathlon in 2009. It happened to be the British Championships. And I crossed the finish line. To cut a long story short, I crossed the finish line, getting the gold medal, becoming British champion. And that's where the opportunities come. Because somebody came up to me and said, Steve, you're now British champion. Would you like to represent Great Britain? And I said, hell yeah, I'd love to represent Great Britain. And that's where, you know, be aware of your vision and seize those opportunities. Opportunities are out there all the time. It's about hearing about them, seeing them, smelling them, and doing so, grabbing hold of them with both hands and doing something. And that's what I was prepared to do. Reset my goals, representing Great Britain and going forward in power triathlon.
Incredible. A couple of things you said there really resonated with me. That when you talked about the Scouts, it just reminded me, and I won't go into this other than to say I got thrown out of the Girl Guides. Oh. There we go.
You can't leave us there. What did you get thrown out for?
Whole different story. But actually, the interesting thing with that though was I was so basically I was accused of being the one that dropped the tent on Arcala. I didn't really, but anyway. At that moment in time, that's how it was interpreted. But it really interested me, my response to it when I look back on it now, because I kind of went, wow, that doesn't work for me, that you've thrown me out of guide. So I'm gonna join the Adventure Scouts. I'm gonna do something different, because I'm gonna show you that I can, whoever the you might have been.
Yes.
Which in essence, Steve, the you was me.
Yeah.
Clearly. But a couple of things you said there really kind of resonated with me. There's a phrase I often think about is compare and despair. And I think social media helps this quite often for people, where we find ourselves in a position when we look around us at others and we have an amazing way to distort what we're seeing in order to be right about our interpretation. And our interpretation might not actually serve us particularly. So we have a choice already at that moment in time to decide whether it serves us to compare and despair, or whether it serves us to take that energy that we're kind of leaking and draw it back in around the only comparison I need to make is with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I compare where I am right now to where I want to be?
Okay.
And what's my starting point? What are the stepping stones to get there? So when you talked about running for the first time and the pain you had in your right ankle, for instance, that for someone might be enough to go, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And equally, what that is for someone is, do you know what? That's a motivator to move me forward, because I'm going to get past this. I'm going to get through this. As individuals, we have an inherent negativity bias, so we're already pre-programmed to potentially look for what isn't working as opposed to what is working. And I similarly to you, my motivation is always around. So what is going well? What can we do? What do we have an influence over? Actually, what do you believe you don't have influence over, but actually could achieve? Purely by realigning the way that we're thinking about something in order to generate forward-thinking energy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I talk about turning coal to gold. So your coal is your contempt, your obstacles, your loathing, your anger. That's pushing you forward. Your gold is something that, like, your goal, your opportunities, your love, your desire, your dream. And I think there's certain things that push you and certain things that pull you, depending on how you see things. I think, comparing yourself to others or even being angry isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you use it correctly.
Absolutely.
And you've got to be careful as long as you've got it in tune with yourself. Because I think, like you said, the human body dwells on the negative to protect ourselves, and it doesn't always work that way. So you've got to overcome that sometimes. Yeah,
I remember when I did my first triathlon, I did the sprint one, and I tend to throw myself into something hook, line, and sinker. I'm kind of that original phrase of all the gear and no idea when it comes to sports. Thankfully, I've never been particularly keen on horses. Otherwise, I'd have one and I wouldn't know quite what to do with it. However, I remember rocking up for my first triathlon and putting my bike in and everything and looking around me and realising I was in the middle of a whole load of clubs. And then there was I have to say, Steve, it was the most rewarding experience and completely drove me to want to do more and lead me forward, which I found fascinating.
I think people don't realise with triathlon, it's a very difficult sport. It's not because you do swimming, cycling, and running, but it's the transition, and people don't realise how complicated it is. That you have to know what you're doing. You have to have a good mindset. You have to practice taking your helmet on and off, your shoes on and off, your wetsuit on and off, your race belt, turning it round. There's so many things that could go wrong in triathlon. So the fact that you just get to the end and the finish line in one piece, and you actually you don't go wrong or anything, you don't get disqualified.
Yes.
It's not your that's amazing. That is an amazing thing to accomplish a triathlon. You then put on that the endurance side of it and the training side of it is massive. So I'm not putting anybody off here, but it is a difficult thing to do. A running race, you start, you finish, and you follow everybody else, unless you're leading. But you just follow everybody else. It's quite simple. Triathlon, there's all different shapes and sizes, different categories. You can't necessarily follow people that might be in different. You just don't know what's going on sometimes. It is a difficult sport, which is why finishing is just an amazing accomplishment. So well done.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Good. Yeah,
it's fabulous. I know. I absolutely very much enjoy it, and I've missed not doing any physical ones. I've done a couple of virtual ones through 2020. But I miss not doing some, with others, some physical ones in that sense. So the three things you talk about, so you want to help people, inspire others, and motivate many. Yeah. So, Steve, what is it that will draw people, apart from your incredible level of energy and being inspiring, which clearly you are, what are the key things you think draw people to you that you can offer people?
I guess it's my uniqueness. So I've got a story. It's not like I've read this and then just like telling people what I've read. I've done this. I've lived this, and I didn't know what I wasn't doing this so that I could inspire people. I did this for myself. So it's a very unique story. That almost sounds a bit selfish, but I guess in certain times that's what you got to do. I was trying to help myself through my health, my well-being, standing and walking, and then I had the opportunity of representing Great Britain, becoming a world champion. So I grabbed that, and I've progressed forward with that. Now, as a business owner, I want to give back, and I think that's the big thing that I want to do. And I do want to help people, inspire others, and motivate many. So I'm always thinking about the best ways of doing that. Being a keynote speaker, I can do hundreds, thousands. If there's an audience in front of me, why is it only 1,000? Why not 10,000? Why not Wembley Stadium? The point is, I've got a story. I want to share it. I know it helps people because, I've had so much feedback. I've got the genuine story, unique story. And I think sincerity there as well. There's lots of highs and lows, and there's lots of correlations with people as I go through my story of how they can adapt and adopt to the messages that I say. And that really, really helps. Well, that inspires and motivates them. I think what I realized then was, how do I actually help people? And that's why I've created my workshop and my coaching, because then I can actually give them the tools that I've used, the lists, the information to actually help them to achieve what their goal. You usually, as a business owner, you're always usually talking about your why, as in, why are you doing this? What's your purpose, Steve? And my why is a bit of a twist. So yes, I want to help people, but the twist is, it frustrates me. What frustrates me is people that don't achieve their full potential. They go through life just on a level, really. So they're the type of people, when you say, how are you? And they go, yeah, I'm all right. How's your health? And they go, it could be better. How's your job? Job's a job, isn't it? So. And I just think, what a shame. What a shame it's not awesome, brilliant, fantastic. Why are you not living the full potential of your life? And that frustrates me. Why? Because I've been there. I've been in a job that I didn't like. I've been in bad health, and I did something about it. And I'm not saying it was easy, but I took action. And look at me now. I love doing what I do. I jump out of bed at 5:30 every morning, do my morning routine. I'm starting work before the kids wake up because I want to, because I'm passionate about it. My health is good, my fitness is good, my relationships is good. And if it's not, then it's something that I'd be aware of and I would start working on. So if I can do it, I want to pass that enthusiasm, that energy, the tools that I use onto others, so that they too can achieve their full potential, so they can go through. And it does sound like a cliche, all this, you only get one life, live it, but you do. I nearly died in 2002. I think that really shook up me as a person, what was going on inside my head, to emphasize all the stuff that I did before the accident to a bigger level, to make sure that I could achieve my full potential, which I feel that I've done, almost tick job. And now I want to pass it on to others, to help them to fulfill their full potential. So I'm always looking for any opportunities and ways of doing that.
So Steve, are there any key milestones for you? Well, not are there any? Of course there are some. Clearly, I'm talking to Steve Judge. So what's your next key milestone? I know you've done your book, Don't Lean on Your Excuses. In one of your one of the YouTube clips I was watching, you were talking about the potential of making a film. What's the next milestone for you, Steve?
Okay, so yes, the film is mentioned in the book, and why not? I think it'd be a great film. And I was looking into that last year, but there's this thing called the pandemic hit, COVID-19. It's kind of screwed things up a little bit. So,
I've heard of it.
So my main thing with last year was very much about survival, my business. This year, my business will be 5 years old, which is an amazing accomplishment for any business to run for that long, especially dragging myself through the pandemic. And I say dragging, I know it's a negative word, but I'm a conference speaker, and there's not many conferences. You could almost say that I'm in the area of entertainment. So as you know, entertainment's really struggled. So the fact that I'm still going is great. So what is my goal? I feel that I've survived now. The thing for me now is to push forward, thinking about what I can do rather than what I can't do. Obviously, I'm doing my conference speaking on virtual, on Zoom and everything, but the workshops is something that I really want to push forward on, because that's something that could help a lot of people. I've already put it on the internet, so it's like an e-learning course. That's great. I want to work on my coaching as well, because that's been a thing that's been growing. That's why I was talking to you about NLP training, because I feel that that's a tool that will really help me to help them. So, training with yourself, Pip, is a possibility. These are the things to make my business more structured, more bigger stability, really, because I love doing what I do. So I want to keep it going. And so you have to grow up a little bit. I say that, it sounds a bit patronizing to myself almost, but you can run a business on passion for about 3 years, and then it doesn't last. And then you have to get serious about it. Policies, procedures, values, all that malarkey.
And growing up stuff.
Yeah, you got to grow up. And so that's
Yeah.
what I want to do, because I love doing what I'm doing. So that is my goal, really. The film, that can wait. That can be put on the back burner. I have looked into it. Obviously not got the funding, so I'd have to look into that a little bit more. And just how I can help people, I guess. That's my main goal. That's my main drive.
So there's so many similarities or synergies between how you spoke then and your journey to recovery. I can absolutely hear that in what you're saying. And I'm curious, you've talked about the fact you've got children, yeah?
Yes.
How I would kind of go, wow, my dad's this massively forward-thinking, energetic, inspirational daddy. He's awesome. How do they pick up on and play out some of the traits that you have, Steve?
They generally just roll their eyes most of the time.
That's normal. That's quite normal. Oh, good.
So they're 13 and 16, and they've been drip fed this for the last 10 years, I guess. So it does mean that I don't have to lecture them or anything. They see me as a person, and I think you speak better, louder in the actions that you do.
Sure.
The fact that I'm up and I'm training and I'm doing my routine. I say training, it's just keeping fit at the moment, nothing big, but they see that. They see me happy in my work. I'm very open with my work, and when I get a client, I tell them about it and I tell them what I'm doing. So I said I'm on a podcast, so be nice and quiet. So they're very much involved in what I do. Yeah. And the fact that they can see that I'm happy is really good, because I think there's a lot of kids that grow up with parents that maybe aren't happy with the work. They go off to this place called work, they come back in a grumpy mood, and the kids are growing up going, oh my goodness, this work thing, I don't really fancy that when I
don't need to do this.
I know. So if anything, I'm portraying that on them. They know about my story. They haven't read my book. They think they know my story, but one day I'll sit down and go through it in a bit more detail with them. But they get the gist of it. They have seen me perform a couple of times. So again, it's all, like I said, it's all drip fed. But what's surprising, we talked about this last night. We're just playing a board game. We don't have a television in this house because we watch DVDs, but we feel television just like saps your time. So we do lots of board games and chatting and stuff. And I was talking about how other kids that I know, when they lose something, they cry and they get really traumatized and stuff. And I said, my kids, I said this to my kids, I said, you two, you don't. Why do you not do that? Not now, and you never have done, really. And they said, oh, I don't know. It's just a game, isn't it? I said, that's a good attitude. But, I know that you two are quite competitive sometimes. And they said, yeah, we can be when we need to be. And I think that's the same with me, that I clearly am competitive. To become a world champion, you have to be competitive. But I'm not all the time. I'm quite a nice guy. I can just take it or leave it, depending on what the situation is. I can play a game of badminton. But if somebody said, OK, the next game, it's a competition, I'm going to try and beat you, I'd turn it on. I'd go, all right, let's do this. Or
bring it on.
Give me a week and I'll do some training and then I'll beat you, or something like that. But if we're just playing for fun, let's just play for fun. And I think it's about seeing the bigger picture, really, about how serious you got to take these things. And I think my kids are growing up with that concept that if they really want something, they can, but otherwise just be happy, just enjoy life. Yeah,
that's such a important message, isn't it? Such an important message for us all to kind of listen to at this moment in time as well, Steve. It's relevant throughout life, and I think it's quite poignant. So people listening to this podcast will probably perceive it as being quite poignant for where they are right now. I've had some really interesting conversations with my daughter, with my parents, where they're at, how they're going through this journey that we're currently in from a pandemic perspective. And my mum, who will be 80 this year, never ceases to amaze me with her positivity. She's constantly kind of going, and this will happen next, and this is just another step forward to us all being together. It's lovely because it's just that beautiful energetic kind of thread that runs through with an element of realism, if that makes sense, which I think is just so powerful. Okay, so let's just to circle back to where we were at the very beginning. Steve, what are the key messages, if you were able to sum up a couple of the real key messages for you that you would share with others from your journey so far, what would they be?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I talk about myself, but this is really to help other people. So let's imagine these people, they know what their goal is, and it's so important. Have a vision, have a goal, know where you're going. What I'd say is, what I've learned is on that journey, there's going to be times when you struggle, and it may feel like you're failing, but you're not failing. You've got to see that as feedback. So that's one message. Another message is that, you know, when you're working towards your goal and you're struggling, because you will struggle with motivation or barriers or whatever, don't change the goal. Just change the plan. It's so important that if you've chosen something that you really love, then don't let that go. Goodness me. And rest if you must, but don't quit. You know, you've got to keep going. There's going to be times when there's barriers on your way. Always. Yeah. You've got to see those barriers as excuses, and you've got to turn those excuses into challenges. That's how you're going to smash through those barriers. But the big message that I want to leave everybody with is to make sure that you're always the best that you can be. Because if you're the best that you can be, then you'll have no regrets. And I believe that that's the thing that's important in life, is to live your life with no regrets. And that will eventually help you to achieve your goal, and that will eventually help you to be happy.
Thank you, Steve. You touched on 2 NLP principles there as well, without even knowing it. So there's one around, never failure is only feedback, which I think is so true. Isn't everything we get is feedback? It's our choice what we then choose to do with it. And one of the other things you said there, and I went, oh yeah, a little equation I often play through with others is behavior plus situation equals outcome. This is when you were saying about your goal. Don't deviate from it. It might just be you need to flex the way you're thinking and behaving around it in order to take another step forward. And I think it's so key. And yes, fabulous. Thank you, Steve. Fascinating, isn't it, how we can just achieve so much when we're in that right headspace, even if we're initially spurred on by something massive and, you know, really quite potentially very life-changing, how it can drive us forward to achieve just so much. So, Steve, I thank you for your time today. How can people find you?
So I have a website, of course, so www.steve-judge.co.uk. My email and phone number is there, but otherwise social media. I'm all over the place. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So yeah, come and follow me on that, connect with me, and let me see how I can help you, inspire you, and motivate you. That's what I love to do. So I look forward to contacting and connecting with anybody.
Fabulous. Steve, thank you so much for your time. I've really appreciated speaking to you. It's been lovely. And I am so looking forward to hopefully getting to know more about you as we move through our journey together as well.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.